United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the Preble Town Board meeting of June 12th, 2023. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have a guest tonight from NBT, which the town of Preble does business with. We hold virtually all of our accounts at NBT. And so we're going to do a small presentation, and feel free to ask any questions that you might have along the way. And so I want to introduce Jamie Reynolds and Jeff Armstrong. You got the floor.
Good evening, all. I was on the school board for 13 years, and whenever there was a crowd, you knew there was trouble, I guess. So it wasn't too crowded, but anyway, pleasure to be here. Jeff Armstrong, he's in Cortland. He's our territory manager, works with me in the government banking arena as well, and we've been doing a lot of presentations lately, so really pleased to be able to come tonight and chat with you all, and then we can make it as interactive as you want, ask questions or whatever. But I'll give you a quick synopsis because we have been doing a lot, because since about 2008, a lot of you remember, we haven't had much in the way of interest rates when we had the financial crisis, and the Fed made kind of unprecedented decision to bring rates down to zero, which was great if you wanted to borrow to stimulate the economy, but not so great if you got money. So for the better part of 15 years, there hasn't been much return on anything, at least from a deposit standpoint. And, over time, rates have, they generally move up and down, and, that's what we grew up with. And I've been at the bank 35 years. I've never seen a 15-year period before where rates didn't really move much. So, when I was in the residential mortgage area, there was an old saying, 8 is great, and that was mortgage rates were 8%. Well, we've had mortgage rates for your kids probably think rates are supposed to be 3%, right? Because that's all they've ever seen. So that's how it's been good in a sense on the lending side, but not good on the deposit side. So those of you that have been around and saved money, there hasn't been much return, and that, is the same for communities, including the town of Preble. So what's happened just before COVID, rates started to come up a little bit because they've been unprecedentedly held low to stimulate the economy. And then this thing called COVID hit in March of 2020, and I remember the day well. I was in front of a school district when the Fed met, and 3/4 of a point down, and we were back down to zero again, for a couple of years. But the last year, when they kind of came to grips with the fact that this inflation wasn't temporary or transitory, was their words, and they had to kind of, in a rapid way, increase rates. That's what's happened over the last year. So now there is some margin that should be had, and for the town who has a lot of savings accounts, definitely ought to restructure how you have those now, so you can benefit from however long it lasts. I think there's building consensus that we are about at the peak, and that if you read between the tea leaves, it looks like they're pausing on their increases, and that where we are now may be where we are at for I don't know how long a while is, but at least they're going to see if it bakes in and that the inflation does come down. I mean, when they raise rates as fast as they have, there also has been some counterproductive things that have happened. I mean, if you think about it, they're trying to slow down the economy to make inflation less, because I don't like paying, I like paying $1.87 for gas, at one point, and then groceries being reasonable. And that hasn't been the case of late. So, in some sense, they want inflation to come down, but you don't want to slow down the economy too much where we go the other direction. So it seems like they've got, after this rapid acceleration, they're at a pause point to see if what they've done bakes in and inflation comes down, and they can have worst case soft landing, kind of a slowdown and not anything dramatic. So what does that mean for the town? Certainly, you know, the old savings accounts are kind of, I mean, those accounts have been open a long time and used to be money market accounts and savings accounts were kind of synonymous. They both are restricted in that they only allow 6 kind of transfers or withdrawals a month under what was a 1970s regulation called Reg D that the government put in place. That's been suspended during COVID and they haven't reinstituted it, so you could actually do as many transfers as you want currently. But so looking at money markets would be one option that you could do. You know, those rates are around 3%, certainly better than what you have. But there's no one size fits all solution here because, you know, some of your monies are quasi liquid, but you need them. And some of them might be reserves and you're really saving for something, right? So those are more sticky. You could put them in something more long-term or a CD or something like that. CDs are in the 4% range. But, you know, at a year, the rates start going the other direction. We're in what they call an inverted yield curve because normally the longer you invest, the better you do in a traditional curve. Short-term year, long-term it goes up because you get the benefit of time. Right now it's inverted because rates are so high, they're expected to drop. So if you go up over a year, you know, rates then are actually less. But you know, year you can see that far that, you know, if you don't have something that's, you don't want to tie it up too long, you can actually benefit more than a money market by putting it into a CD, and we don't need to get in the weeds here on how much and what and each account, I guess, probably, but those are 2 options. A third option, again, depending on how much maybe you can combine some of your accounts. I know you can't combine highway with your general, they got to be separate, but if you could combine monies, we have another product that's a form of a money market. That's called our ICS or investment cash sweep account. Those, I'll try to explain it simply here, I guess, but it's as a municipality, any monies you have that are over and above what FDIC would cover, we have to collateralize. So somebody probably gets our weekly and monthly collateral form from the Bank of New York Mellon that collateralizes your deposits. So if the bank would ever, something happened to the bank, wouldn't honor your deposits, you can call the Bank of New York Mellon and cash in those treasuries, which we pledge for you. So the public funds are never at risk, no matter what, on the muni side of the municipality. That's municipal state law. It's actually probably law in every state, but I know New York best because that's most of my territory. By the way, MBT's headquartered in Norwich, not too far away, and I don't know how long we've had branches. Alliance used to be, I think, you worked for Alliance, Jeff. But,
National and Alliance.
yeah, probably 10 years ago, maybe. But MBT's been around since 1856, and that's where I started in the farm department as an ag lender in 1987. So I've always been there. Haven't done that in a while, but I've done other things. And I've been a municipal lender and banker here, I guess, for the last 6 years or so. So this collateralizing your deposits is obviously key. As you know, there's certain things that are really important to a municipality, especially smaller ones where you look at every nickel, right? And that's safety, obviously, first. You can't invest in the stock market as a municipality like we could individually. You can't risk public funds, and that's a big difference between a business or an individual and a municipality. But we have the collateral piece, so we have nothing ever at risk. Roy Rogers said when times were interesting, he said he was more concerned with the return of his principal than the return on it. Well, we like to do both for you. So the safety is obviously important, but getting some return, now that there is some, should be in your best interest as well. So this investment cash sweep product I mentioned as the third option, it's really a play on the collateral. It costs a bank to hold municipal funds money to pledge that Bank of New York collateral. We're pledging the investments there. We can't lend them out. It's just kind of money we have to park and get no return on. So it's expensive for a bank to do that. And that's why some banks do not even participate with municipalities. They don't want to, it's too thin of a business, if you will. But we've always been a community bank and supporting our communities. I don't ever envision us not, doing municipal banking. But this investment cash sweep product utilizes FDIC insurance through a third party called Intrafee that we partner with. And they place money at other banks that participate in the network, throughout the country, really, and banks that you wouldn't otherwise do business with. And they do it in basically $250,000 blocks, so that we're using FDIC insurance of these other banks. And then, that sounds bad because the money's going elsewhere, right, out of the community. But what it is a reciprocating product, such that then those banks send their customers money back to NBT. So we get the benefit of the FDIC insurance at the other banks, but we still have the same amount of money as we would if we kept it all. So it's just a different dollar bill, if you will, but we benefit. Of course, by keeping it local, keeping it where we can benefit, we lend that money back out to the community, so we can, basically have lower loan rates than we would if we had to go to the street and buy it at a higher rate. So that's kind of the benefit of keeping it, local in the community. But it allows you to get a higher return because it's a cheaper way for us to provide the collateral than we would if we did the, if we just used our own collateral at the Bank of New York. So those rates are certainly in the 4s and even upwards towards 5, depending on how much money you have. But a key consideration is really what you can combine too. You've got all these different accounts on here for different, purposes. If some are really, I've got one school district that's got 7 ICS accounts. Well, I just met with them a couple weeks ago. I said, you probably don't need 7. Talk to your auditor or your accountant, and there's probably ways you can combine, the accounts and do some sub-accounting and get the benefit of having less accounts to reconcile. Somebody has to do all that. But somebody does. And, but if there's a way to simplify too, as you really, as looking at kind of an account analysis here, obviously that's a positive thing. The other things to think about that has changed a lot over time is just been the safety and fraud issue that's out there. Everybody here probably knows somebody that's got their account compromised or had fraud, or somebody stole your credit card number or something. And every time the town writes a check, your name's on it, your address, the account number, the bank's routing number, it's up, and the signature is on there. And in this day and age, you can copy that signature pretty easily. And there's just been an inordinate amount of fraud that the bank is involved with customers, every day. When I started, we had one guy in the security, department. He carried a gun, he sat in the lobby, and he also oversaw the bank fleet cars. It wasn't even a thing, really. And now I bet we've got 25 people maybe, Jeff. I don't know. And they're all in cybercrime, different types of fraud. And that's all we do. That's all they do. They do presentations at different places to kind of make people current on what's out there. But you'd be scared to death if you knew what could happen. But it's something that, every municipality needs to think about now, because if it hasn't happened, you're lucky. It's really, I had one, it was, this was a couple of years ago, but I can tell you how easily it can happen. It was a not-for-profit, one everybody donates to, right? They have one event every year. So they go around, all the businesses were donating to them. And somehow a person in that not-for-profit office clicked on the wrong thing, and somebody got into their computer and was basically reading every deposit that they made. And then they fraudulently made fake checks on all these donors that donated to it. And I'm like, it was like 8 o'clock at night. I got a call from one of my customers and says, our account, something's going on. He said, don't cash anything tomorrow. Sure enough, they had a check that was being presented, which we of course returned. And then within a month, I had like 5 or 6. So everybody's trying to figure out, how did this happen? And when I finally figured it out that it was a common denominator, they all donated to this one. In this case, it was a not-for-profit, but it could be a community or something too. And nobody lost any money, but they easily could have. So there's cash management tools that we have that is also available for you, which, I'm giving you the thumbnail sketch of it here a little bit, but like for your payroll, you send the bank, basically the bank, an issuance file every time you would write a check, and then we match that file up when the checks are presented to the bank. And if there's anything that's not consistent, we don't pay the check, or we call you or text you or email you, whatever the options you choose are. And you have, until 1 or 2 o'clock or something like that to let us know whether to pay it or return, like you forgot to include it, or it could be legitimate. But it also, if there's fraud, you're not going to get hit. So that's something I like to talk about when we, look at a muni, because that's something that if 10 years ago we wouldn't have that conversation, 5 years ago we wouldn't have that conversation. But we have all these different tools now as a bank, and even though I still think of us as small, we're big enough that we have all these tools that are now available to you as well, as something that it's at your disposal to choose if you want to do something like that. But you don't want to do it. You don't want to lock the door after the horse is stolen, right? So, but anyway, any quick questions, I guess, on anything? I threw a lot of trying to do it quickly here, but
Yeah, I had an original question on the FDIC insurance over $250,000, and you answered that with Bank of New York Mellon.
what I didn't
How that
say
works.
was that the FDIC insurance for municipalities is different than it is for you and I.
Mhm.
For all of us, it's 250,000. If you're over 250,000, well, then you're out of luck unless it's structured differently. Like a husband gets 250, a wife gets 250, that kind of thing. But with a muni, because NBT is in New York State, there's a regulation in the law that allows us to provide 250 for both interest bearing, and then another 250 for non-interest bearing. So if you structure your accounts exactly at 500,000, 250 piece, you would actually be covered under FDIC insurance. And then you wouldn't need the collateral. That's not going to ever happen like that, of course, but that's different than than it would be for you and I. And if you happen to do bank with a bank that wasn't in New York State, you wouldn't have that either. That's just a New York State specific benefit, I guess, if you will, because NBT is headquartered in New York. So that's, even auditors don't always know that. I've had to explain that, to auditors sometimes.
We just got done with a New York State audit.
Did you?
Yes.
I guess we didn't have any questions.
It just wrapped up in April, and everything went fine. There were no issues.
Mhm.
Just a couple of recommendations, and that was about it. So
Yeah. Clean slate. Well, that's
We-
good.
we were clean. Yeah.
That's better than the alternative.
Right.
But you should try to get some better returns that are out there.
Mhm.
And if they stay, lateral for a bit here, then, you can benefit from some higher rates. It really, it would take sitting down and like, all right, how do you operate? What's your cash flow needs for what time frame? And really trying to figure out what made the most sense for you to do better than you're doing. You definitely can do better than you're doing.
Yes.
And you should, and it's really just a matter of maybe dissecting that a bit and seeing what your comfort level is with even ICS. Not everybody likes that, it's like the mechanics of it, or it works fine. It's all in your online banking platform, so you can see it and touch it, just like you could if it was your current savings account or checking accounts. And to move money is as simple as a transfer. an online banker. So one of you is the administrator of that, and you simply add the account, add it in there like it would be any new account. Didn't used to be that simple. 2018 is when we really automated it more, and that's when it's really taken off too. Of course, before that, there wasn't any return on it either, so it didn't make sense to do it. But since 2018, we as a bank, we probably have 250 million in that product now, just in the municipal space. And then we have some in the commercial space that has recently accelerated because of the couple of bank failures that, made the news. So I can tell you about that too if you want.
Well, what I would like to do is sit down with NBT Bank and sit down with somebody, whoever a representative is, probably in Portland or Tully, whichever branch.
Which branch do you use? The one
Well, we use both of them, but
both in Portland?
to set up this appointment, I got a call from the Cortland branch. So, but.
Well, I know Carrie was touching, Carrie Knight maybe?
Yeah,
or-
Carrie Knight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
down Main Street.
Yeah, but I could sit down with somebody and try to explore getting more interest in what we're getting, because we're not really getting anything on our funds right now. So that was one of the purposes for coming in and explaining this, and just letting the board know that I can go in there and sit down with somebody. Does anybody have any questions for Jamie?
Completely confused. Hopefully not. Haven't seen any fruit coming from the stands here, so that's good.
So,
But any questions while I'm here? Because what I'll probably end up doing is talking to Carrie with you
okay,
and kind of work together on it
that would be good.
so that, you're not just skating blind here a little bit. You think about all the different aspects of, okay, we
Carrie
could tie this money up a little bit or, whatever the options
If
are.
Carrie can give me a call, then we can set up an appointment.
Well, you can have her do that. Yeah, Jeff can make sure Jeff's in the same office as her. So-
Good. Okay.
So they both, be right there.
Mhm.
I'm all over the place sometimes,
Mhm.
but,
Are you in the downtown branch or the Groton Ave? office?
Downtown once in a while. I'm there once in a while.
You're on the road too?
I'm all over too.
Okay.
I do have an office there,
Okay.
but I'll have Carrie talk tomorrow.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Jim? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
I'll leave you my card here, so. A couple of takeaways here. This is a little something on that cash. I see this. Hold your bill. If I have any more of those picture ones, I maybe gave them all away.
It's popular.
Just gave me some Friday. I guess I don't have any more of those.
Okay, good.
All right.
Okay, Jamie, thanks a lot for coming.
Okay. Don't keep them too long. All right.
All right, bye-bye now.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Jen?
Dog control, 95 miles traveled, 2 strays picked up and adopted. There was no justice report received.
Thanks, Jen. Highway report, Jeff?
I'll have a copy of it. Last week I signed a sign off on one of the FEMA projects up on the hill. They've been dragging their feet terribly. It was for just basically tuning up the pipes that's already there. I've asked for them to upsize it and that's been rejected. So what it is, and their rates are crazy, but they're about $65,000. So we'll make out well there. It's just frustrating that they wouldn't put the extra 18,000 with it and have it 33% bigger. That's, and the main part of it, the FEMA correcting the bank, we're going round and round with them on that. It's just been pulling teeth. It's crazy. The last time I had to deal with FEMA in 06, we had everything buttoned up in 8 or 9 months, paperwork and all. And this will be 2 years in August. It's nuts. Anyways, the highway school was last week over in Ithaca College. It's over 700 superintendents over there in the smog looking down on Ithaca from Canada. But some of the classes, I got them listed there, seem very timely with everything that's going on in the vehicle market and employees and, finding employees, getting big discussions on getting CDL licensing. There's been a lot of discussion, between private industry and municipalities. Cortland County stepped up to the plate. And actually, one of their questions was highlighted during highway school. If we did need a person with a CDL, they have a trainer in Cortland County Highway that actually train them on our vehicle and take them and get the test. So and they've had 100% success rate with it, Cortland County right now. So I want to give kudos to Cortland County when due. You saw the new salt shed covers on, and while we had it all emptied right out, we took a fire truck and sprayed the inside of the building down and cleaned it up good and let it set a couple days to dry, and then we boiled high flow oil on it and sprayed it to protect the concrete from the salt. And hoping that'll last 4 or 5 years. The rest of it, I think, is later on. So, any questions?
Thanks, Jeff. Recreation, we have everybody here from Recreation. Well, we have Dave.
Yeah.
You're mowing the ball fields.
Yeah,
Any news from you? Anything you want to say?
well, not too much since Sidon should be, or something done with that pump house. So Sidon on it is pretty bad shape. And that gym thing up by the basketball court, the monkey bars, I had to take off because it was broken through rot, not through vandalism or anything, just old age and rot. I took them off and put them over by the little red building there. But there's few little things like that that we should look at and get after.
You guys doing a good job with the mowing.
Thank you.
It looks good. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. County legislator, Kevin's not going to be here tonight. Jen?
Zoning and code enforcement may report 1 building permit issued, 87 miles traveled, 18 building inspections, 52 hours worked, 3 fire inspections, 9 complaint follow-ups, 21 telephone inquiries. The next planning board meeting is June 28th at 7 p.m. The next ZBA meeting is July 6th at 7:30 p.m.
Thanks, Jen. Historian, we have no report here. Jen?
Town clerk fees collected in May, $933. Dispersed $919 to the town of Preble and $14 to New York State Ag and Markets.
Yeah, we'll start on unfinished business. We'll start with LED street lighting. Jim?
Yeah, we've got the draft letter being made out. I sent it to Jen, and she's gonna continually to fill it out with that on our letterhead and submit it to National Grid for the request, the final request. And so along with that, we have all the Jen made some copies. I sent her the actual cost to the town, and we're putting that into the letter. This was done by Amanda, did the, well, this is from Amanda from the planning board. And so, so it was approved. That's what we're sending in. So the total cost of the town would be $4,454.69. Now, the incentives don't kick in until after that's implemented. So the town would have to pay the full amount up front then the incentives are provided by National Grid automatically upon completion of the project. So the incentives are $3,385, which leaves a total cost of $1,069.69. So it's a 6-month payback with the incentives, and 72% energy savings. And so drafted the letter, and so general continue to fill it out on the letterhead, and then we'll send it to everybody for your review and approval.
Good.
But in there, along with the amounts, and Amanda kind of gave us a draft of the letter, but I added to it and filled in the amounts, and so I actually put in there also to acknowledge that National Grid, the town of Preble would take the utility-owned option where National Grid owns and maintains the new non-smart lights, LED lights. So on their approval, they would acknowledge that. So they own and maintain them. So that's where we stand. I give them a list. We have a whole list of the 62 lights that would be replaced. And there's 2 wattages, the 25 and the 48, which the 25 would be put on all the residential roads, and the 48 on the main roads, like most towns would do, like 281 and main roads and Route 11. And so there's 43 25 watts and 48 or 19 48 watts for a total of 62. So I had her do that's where the calculation of the savings came from, the mixture of those 2 wattages. So we're getting the best deal. So it's a very good deal, because as these go out anyways, it would be replaced by LEDs. This gives us a savings up front. as we go.
So things are finally moving forward then.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Any questions for Jim? Okay, so next we want to talk about the Morgan property. Jeff, can you give us a summary on what's going on with that?
Yeah, so I've got a list of the folks that live in those properties who are affected by that occasional flooding down through there. Established that, I've reached out to Chairman Kevin Fitch, also Amanda Barber, and we're trying to put a meeting together just to lay out, the problems and what's going on, some possible fixes for it and like that. So it's, it's kind of back in their court, if you will, but just trying to facilitate if there's some way that we can, as a group, do something with that to help alleviate that, every 4 or 6 year flooding event that happens there. So.
And just so everybody knows, the county now owns that property, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They had it on up for taxes and then pulled it when this came up.
Right.
And I'll just reiterate, my biggest concern is, and everybody knows what it's been doing, but if somebody did something else to that property and it became an annual or every couple of years, somebody's getting flooded out, that'd be a lifestyle change. And the other catch is I gotta think it put it down in what you could sell a house for if it gets flooded every couple of years. So.
Okay. Any questions for Jeff on this?
So there's gonna be a meeting, Jeff, with.
Yeah, trying to see what's convenient for them. I said probably some evening at the firehouse in the next couple of weeks. I'll let everybody know.
And this meeting is with the neighbors of that property.
And soil and water.
And soil and water.
Soil, water, and Kevin Fitch.
Kevin Fitch. This is the property in the corner of Preble Road and Wright Road. And
the catch to that too is, and one of the things the highway school was Steuben County, Chemung was there also, but their soil and water districts, they've actually done quite a few projects like that. Soil and water district has a broader stroke, if you will, than what the town can do as far as staying in the right of way and doing other things. So they can do more things, out of the right of way to help with water control or other projects. if you've been involved with any of them, Mike, but they've got a lot broader stroke at what they can do versus a town. So I think getting the right people together is the bigger piece of this puzzle. If we can, you know, get the right agencies and the residents together, maybe something can happen.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jeff.
Those people have been there for 50 years that had that flood. And you got the biggest one complaining now.
Exactly.
Up there, all those houses up that end. It's been over 80 years they've had flooding up that way.
So let's fix it.
And let's fix some other places over here in Route 11. I think you're opening a can of worms.
So the next item is the charging stations. We just want to touch on that because this story is coming to a conclusion here. And I spoke with Rick Fritz and he's speaking with the engineer, Casey, and they have agreed that there does need to be a handrail along that walkway. And that is the last thing that needs to be, the last requirement that needs to be done there. So that's in the works. Apparently they agreed to put it in and, you know, then we'll get ready to go. Don, do you have any insight on this?
No, we're looking forward to those railings being installed so we can bring this saga to its conclusion.
It's been over a year with this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's down to the railings. And I saw an email this afternoon, maybe you were part of that or saw a copy, but an email between Casey, the engineer, and Rick. And I'm one of the ones that gets copied on it. They leave Jeff out anymore, I guess, but I guess it's kind of out of your hands. But yeah, so it looks like they are making concrete progress now. How soon they get the railings in, you know, that they're talking about, I don't know. But so the station's not being used, to my knowledge.
Not yet.
It's not. So I think that's the last piece. They're ready to flip the switch.
Right, okay. So we'll continue talking about this until they're actually charging vehicles there. Next item, firefighters tax exemption. Jeff or Don, you want to?
Well, this is an item that Jeff had brought, you know, to our attention, and actually, I think you had forwarded there's a conference by a state firefighters association, so this would be pretty helpful information. So, what this proposed local law is that you have would allow for a tax exemption in favor of volunteer firefighters who reside and are firefighters in the town. If this board decides to move forward, you wouldn't act on it tonight. Of course, you want to read it, and there may be some questions. You would then need to set up a public hearing, and then it could be adopted. It doesn't mean that any volunteer fireman or fire lady, fire person is eligible. There has to be a certification by the certifying agency, which I believe would be the fire district. And the exemption, we would be approving that exemption with regard to the town law or town tax that the town imposes. The fire district can do the same thing and exempt a volunteer fireman from the taxes collected for the fire district, and then the county can do the same thing for the county tax. So this relates to the town tax that we impose.
So I guess what I would ask the board to read through this over the month. When we come back in July, we can revisit this. And if everybody agrees with this, we can go ahead and schedule a public hearing and then actually vote on this.
Is this gonna be retroactive? So like, or it starts day one to get your 20 years of service in there?
Yeah, the certification is not so much up to us. There's some criteria in there. But in terms of the effectiveness, it wouldn't be effective until, as I understand it, until the next tax status date of March 1 of 24. Really, tax status overall can't, my understanding is, can't change only as of that date.
Right, but I'm just talking about it, so like the years of service is that,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah,
that,
yeah, we
that's
would
right,
start
yeah.
at zero now. That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions on this local law? Okay. New business. We have the comprehensive plan that the zoning department has been working on, the zoning board, and Don has been working with the zoning board for how many years now? We went through COVID with this project, going line by line through the zoning code. And by doing that, the board realized that they really had to go back to the comprehensive plan also and take a look at that, just to make sure what they're doing with the zoning code is complementary with the comprehensive plan. This comprehensive plan is the cornerstone of what everything is based on. In fact, in the latest issue of Preble Today, our newsletter, there's an article in there about what is a comprehensive plan, and it talks about this issue. So, Don, can you explain a little bit about your work on this?
Sure, you know, it's a, as Jim is saying, it's really the kind of the blueprint for the town and your land use regulation as set forth in your zoning ordinance. And it hasn't been updated, and it should be updated periodically. The current comprehensive plan was adopted in '06. So it's certainly due or overdue. You know, ideally, maybe it's every 8 to 10 years. The planning board might review, and we've talked about this at the planning board, might review the comprehensive plan, and then they don't adopt it. They, as with this version, it's a version that the planning board has put together, but they presented it, they've approved presenting it to the town board. And then the town board, we need to have a public hearing on it. Once you've reviewed it, to hear input before you adopt it. And then it would be, you know, your comprehensive plan moving forward. And as Jim made mention too, so this doesn't contain the particular regulations. You go to the zoning ordinance for the regulations, but our zoning ordinance should be consistent with our comprehensive plan. You know, we can't be approving something in the zoning ordinance that's far afield from what our comprehensive plan says. This is the vision for our town. You know, this is where, you know, whether it be industrial or residential or R1L, if that's in our comprehensive plan, we can't go afield from the structure of the comprehensive plan when we go to enact laws. So, for example, there's a couple particular things you'll find noted in there. One relates to short-term rental. Okay, and there's no statement as to what needs to be done other than to say, in effect, something needs to be done. It's a topic now that certainly wasn't a topic in '06, so now it's mentioned in the comprehensive plan. I think there's also language, for example, in the proposed zoning ordinance, language relating to the Hamlet district, the Four Corners, and the mixed use that's been kicked around, and there is some provisions in the proposed zoning ordinance that is they're continuing to work on, and that's going to be coming down the pipe here, I think, in the next few months, which again will come to the board. So we kind of had the zoning ordinance work, maybe a little bit of the cart before the horse, but they go hand in hand, and so that's kind of an overview of it. So, if you know, one way to look at this would be to have the existing comprehensive plan in the other hand, and you know, it's not easy. I think there's with the version you have, there's some highlighting, right?
Well, I was going to ask you that, Don, is that this looks like a master copy that was given to me and to Jennifer. There's highlighted areas in this, and And so I assume that these highlighted areas are changes that are made, right?
Represent changes, that's
Right.
correct.
Okay, so on our copies, we don't have the, I made quick highlights in my copy. But I'm gonna pass this around and you don't, instead of highlighting all of this, I just highlighted the beginning and then the end of the paragraph of what's changing. And, right, I don't think anybody here has original comprehensive plans at their desk at home, but, you know, to compare the two. But the thing is just to read through this generally, to see what you think about it as a board. And if there's anything that you have disagreements on, of course, just highlight that and mark it, and we can talk about it and come in July.
Yeah, there's not huge changes. It's intended to be an update of what's in place. And again, the changes are noted, so it's not major stuff, but it should cause you to think about, okay, is this the vision for our town in terms of our land development over the next 5 to 10 years?
And the comprehensive plan is fairly brief. You know, it's, I don't know, it's 7 pages or something, but
Yeah, it's nice.
you know, the rest of it is just reference material about the town of Preble, historical information, factual information, so on. So it shouldn't take us too long to go through this and take a look at it. So the board has 2 pieces of homework for this month: comprehensive plan, and then the new local law.
Yeah, and as you note, Jim, there's the back end of this is the profiles of Preble. And you'll see that was actually prepared by county planning back in April of '94. So when the comprehensive plan came out at that point, it was included in that at that time. So actually, Peter McClure thought it was important to continue with that historic information in connection with this current proposed revised version.
Well, this information will probably be updated, right, to today's.
Well, I don't know what, honestly, I think Peter wanted to just, you know, it's kind of in a historic context. But that shows the history of this town to some extent for the planning board's write-up.
And as I recall, when this comprehensive plan was created, the originators of this comprehensive plan were very, very concerned about some of the bullet points that they had made here. And that is protection of the aquifer, that was very important. Protection of prime and agricultural land, that was very important. You know, limiting industrial areas to certain districts.
Right.
You know, that was important. So there are some very important key items in here that we need to maintain as a board.
Yeah, and for, the Hamlet district, that's, I think, somewhat of a response from Uncle Tom's store and the fact that that building is now closed, and it was basically a grandfathered use, and commercial use really presently is not an allowed use at that site. So maybe you like the idea, maybe you don't like the idea, or, but that's where that comes from. And then also the short-term rental is mentioned in there, and it's just recognizes that that's an issue that needs to be addressed in some fashion through regulation, and it recites that there's some upsides to that can be considered with regard to that kind of use, and some downsides, potential downsides as well, that needs to be addressed and recognized and addressed in some way.
Does the board have any questions about what we're doing here? Okay. So we'll continue on this topic in July, when we come back and talk about this after we've read it. Money's received. We received $779 from USPS. And now we'd like to open up the meeting for public comment and questions. If anybody has anything they want to talk about, yes?
For starters, I think we missed approving the minutes from May.
We approved them in the beginning when we first,
Did we first? Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize.
that was the first thing we did.
I guess I just missed that.
Mhm.
I thought we missed over it. Okay. My other comment is right now, the only way you can get the agenda for this meeting is by coming to the meeting itself. So I was wondering if we could start putting the agenda actually on the website so people could see ahead of time what is going to be on the agenda so that they can decide if they want to come to this meeting or not. And at the same time, also, if the minutes don't get approved for a month, so maybe there would be a way we could put draft minutes out so people can see that in a more timely fashion versus having to wait a whole month to see what the draft minutes are. And maybe we could also add the highway report to give people more information, just for the community in general.
Your second request on posting the draft of the minutes is easier than your first request. And because the reason being is that we have this request that comes up from time to time about publishing our agenda before the meeting. We don't have anybody here full-time. Everybody's part-time. And it's very difficult, and this agenda comes together right at the end of the day. We kind of accumulate it during the month as things happen. We write them down, but we don't really know exactly 100% until right before, because Jen comes in, she gets information from me on the phone of what I have, and she puts it together a few hours, well, probably 2 hours before the meeting. And then the guys from NBT Bank, it was undecided whether they were really going to show up or not. So we couldn't publish them coming because they may not have come in. So being the fact that we are a very small town and we all do a lot of work with very little pay and nobody's full-time, it becomes a burden to say these are the minutes, like say 3 days beforehand, and they can change. The agenda can change. It can change in a substantial way from 3 days before until the day of the meeting. So that's what I would say. But a draft of the minutes, we can certainly put that on.
That'd be great.
The highway.
Yeah.
I don't know what Jeff has to say about that.
Have at it.
Yeah.
What's included in the meeting minutes anyway?
Mhm.
What you report at
Yeah.
this meeting?
So if it's in the draft report, then that'd be great.
Mhm. Mhm. So those I think are easier than
Okay.
the agenda. So that's just it's the nature of our town.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions or comments or concerns or anything? Okay. We need to make a motion to pay the general fund vouchers.
Make a motion, pay general fund vouchers, abstract number 6, number 96 to 127, totaling $32,524.70.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Need a motion to pay highway fund vouchers.
I'll make a motion to pay the highway fund vouchers, abstract number 6, numbers 55 to 68, totaling $18,400.78.
All in favor? Carried. And if there's nothing else to come before the board, then we need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Okay. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
They might
Did we get survey?
they might- I mean, in a positive way, not necessarily negative.
They gotta go
ahead with the subdivision. So we have to do that. I guess it's on the agenda
Right.
for
And you don't get it back.
2 weeks from now.
Even now, you don't get it on there?
I mean,
Kind of stay out.
something they don't want it on tonight because somebody's gonna-
I don't know anything.